been thinking about possibly having your own television show or starting your own podcast or even your interview skills, welcome, friends. I am so glad that you are here today for Simply Sarah. We have a powerful hour ahead of us with none other than Ann Mercouris. And when I first met her, she was Ann Meyer. And in this process of having her own television network, she's gotten married. And Ann, it's just amazing to be with you this morning.
Thank you for having me, Sarah. I always enjoy our conversations.
They are always enlightening and they always seem to open doors for me, every single conversation that we have. Ann, tell me about how you got to where you are today, friend. And you can choose a short version, you can choose a long version, doesn't matter. We will get to the interview part of it in terms of interview techniques and practices.
Absolutely. So normally I don't share like so far back, but the reason why I want to share a little bit about before TV media and all of that is because I want people who are watching to realize it doesn't matter where you start. You can end up wherever you want to be if that's where you decide you want to go. So, I've had plenty of careers in my lifetime. I've lived many, many lives in this meat suit, and I'm about to be 46, but I didn't start in the media world until about 4 years ago. And so, I've had plenty of other things that I've done, been and seen and all the things. Oh, but, COVID hit. And at the time I was working in a gym as a nutrition and personal trainer, coach and trainer. And the gym closed. So I lost my job, understandably, which was a blessing in disguise because I would have stayed there because I was happy enough. But, we all know that the enemy of great is good.
Yes, so true.
It is, right? Yes. So I ended up hiring a business coach, and she suggested that I do an online summit in order to create an email list to sell to. So I did that, and it was wildly successful. I had people on that, were interviewed by Oprah. So it just right out of the gate, it just sort of fit. And in that process, I was interviewed for TV shows and in magazines, featured and things like that, not because of me, but because of who I was bringing to the world on my stage.
Yes.
And it just sort of, it ended up being one of the people that interviewed me said, you should have your own show. And I just thought, you know what? I just interviewed 62 people. I might as well. I know exactly what I'm doing. Well, I didn't know exactly what I was doing, but I didn't let that stop me. So I've had my own TV show since October 2020. It's wildly successful. Thank you. Yes. We are actually rebranding and moving into something new. But my point is that, part of that was I've been doing it for so long that I got bored and it needed to grow or it needed to go because it's great that I'm making an impact, but I'm also bored and I don't look forward to it anymore. So that was a problem. And my newer business coach suggested I create a program to teach people how to do what I do. And I thought, that's brilliant.
It is.
So I did, and I was advertising about it on Facebook. And the CEO of E360 TV reached out to me. This is the first time he called me unscheduled, and I thought something was dire, like something was wrong because why is he calling me?
Right.
And it turns out he'd seen what I posted on Facebook and said, have I talked to you about having your own network? And I thought, this is amazing. So we worked out the details, signed contracts, and that's how it was born. Achieve TV was born from just flowing through the universe and following the next step. It was kind of like, it's all foggy still, but I can still see the next few steps in front of me. So it's in this process, I've learned that I've learned the gaps where people need the most help and where I needed the most help and there was nobody there to help me. So now I like to be that person for other people.
What I find so truly amazing for the years that we've walked together, Julianne, is if I come to you with a question about technology or truly anything else in life, and you don't have an answer, you will say something along the lines of, let me figure it out. And then you come back and the way that you teach it is so easily consumable and applicable. And so for anybody who is considering the opportunity, if this one's just kind of coming up on you and you're like, I wasn't expecting this conversation on Simply Sarah, but something about this is speaking to you, into your heart, I just really encourage you to consider a conversation with Julianne about having your own television show, because truly she has created all the pieces that you need to be highly successful out the gate. Yes, there's a learning curve in the process, but there's a learning curve for everything. There's a learning curve in settling, right? There's a learning curve in mediocrity. And so why not make the learning curve be one that propels you forward into something that you feel is your next best incredible place? So along those lines then, in our conversations, we've been talking about interview skills and talents. And I don't know of anybody who isn't interviewing all the time. We're interviewing the person who's taking our order to find out what the best thing is for the day, right? What's the freshest food that you have today? We're interviewing the people that we are looking at on YouTube or any other social media or E360 television, looking to decide, is this really a conversation I want to be part of today? Right. So we are always interviewing, always looking. But then there's this other part about interviewing where we are coming forward and actually asking people questions that make a difference in terms of life, in terms of decisions that we're going to make on a much grander scale. And you have some amazing practices that you use, Julianne, whether you are on the red carpet or you're having a conversation with somebody in the grocery store. What are some of those best practices that you want to share with us today?
This is deceptively simple. It's to actually listen. Actually listen to the person that is speaking to you. Because usually when we're listening, we're thinking of our next question. We're thinking of how we're going to respond instead of actually listening to what the person is saying, who's right in front of us. Now, you mentioned the red carpet, and I have done red carpet events before, and I don't get people's information before they come to me. So it is 100% on the fly. I might have a topic that we're supposed to focus on,
Sure.
but imagine you're supposed to magically know who this person is, and you might not, and what their specialty is. So how do you actually ask an intelligent question without offending someone by not knowing who they are? And it really just comes down to asking really interesting sorts of things. Like, for example, one of the first red carpet events I was at, it was focused on somebody that had passed away. It was in honor of him. And so that opened up the door for me to ask a basic question in order to get to who they are, so I could ask something that was a lot more zeroed in onto who they are, what they specialize in, and why they're there. And it all came down to actually listening. This is number one. That is by far the number one thing. But the other thing too is, if you do have time, is to do your research. And because if you don't know what you don't know, and a lot of the times people, especially the more famous they are, or the more often they're interviewed, they get asked the same questions over and over and over again. You don't want to be that person that's asking them the same thing. So I always like to come up with a few different things that I will ask people when it's appropriate. For example, certain people, I'll ask them what their morning routine is, because people want to know in order to be that successful.
Right.
So it just depends on who it is, but I always have a few different questions that I have in my toolbox
Yes.
that I can pull out that I know they've never been asked before. I mean,
Right.
Morning routine, yes, but also it depends on what the audience wants to hear.
Oh, absolutely. And being aware of your audience and having, in your process of doing all the television shows that you have and now being a network president, do you speak to one person, or are you speaking to a huge audience when you do your shows?
I love that question, and it does have a different result depending on how you're going to focus. And the thing that I've learned that works the best and is by far the most authentic is to ask questions that I'm curious about. What interests me? Because if I'm asking in order to elicit an answer that I think other people will like, it doesn't land as well. Now, that being said, I might ask a question I know the answer to because I don't know if the audience knows, and they need to, be educated.
Right. Right.
And that's okay. But now it's just come down to what am I curious about? Because if I'm curious, people are watching my show, so they are curious from my perspective as well. Yes. And then also it's interesting because if you're open to what people's answers are, I've never ever followed my own agenda. Whenever I have one, I've never followed it because something interesting has been said, and I thought, oh my gosh, I need to know more about that. So I don't want to miss out on those kinds of questions.
I think that's just such a deep, transparent answer. I was thinking back for myself, why do I always ask this first question of how did you get here, right? Mm-hmm. And I go back to my childhood in Africa when we were living way out in the village, and it took a little tiny Cessna for people to come out and visit us, but yet dignitaries would regularly come out to see the work that was happening. Whether it was about education that was being built for the women, whether it was about seeing how the men's education was being extended, whether it was about the clean water projects that my parents were working on as well, whatever it happened to be, there was a lot of reasons that lots of people wanted to come. And there were 0 restaurants in the villages. And so it was always at our house, always at our table that the delegates would come. And it was always the question of, for me, whether it's them, how did they get here? Like, what was the important thing for them to come to this particular place? Why are they here? What's their background? And just allow that to show up, however that was going to show up. Sometimes a short answer, sometimes a very long answer. But always inside of that was this desire to learn more, to know more about how did you get here, right? What's been the journey? What's been the path? And so I really appreciate you going back to before and talking about all the different things that you have had so many other versions of what you have done. And I do think that this is one of the most satisfying for you. I don't mean to be putting words in your mouth, Julianne, but I'm loving the energy, the bubbliness, the effervescence that you have, whether we are in a TV host conversation where there's a whole bunch of us that are there and you are asking questions and fielding answers and giving us more tips and techniques, or that you're actually on air in front of a live audience and sharing with them there. When you think about listening into the answer and allowing that to move you to the next place that you want to go, what have been some of the surprises for you as you've asked questions? Because I think as we interview people, again, whether we are interviewing them to come take a job for us or do something else, or we're interviewing them to come work on our home, whatever it happens to be, that there is something, that thread that pulls us forward into the authenticity, and for us to be open to an optimal answer. Maybe it's not the answer we were necessarily expecting, but for us to be open to that particular answer. So what are some of the things that have been surprises for you?
The number one surprise, and you kind of touched on this, is the idea that by simply listening, just listening and genuinely caring about what this person has to say, 99.999% of the people open up in a way that they never have before. And because they feel safe.
Right.
They're in front of, I think my audience is up to, speaking of my show, is up to 171,000. On average. And that's a lot of people to share your deepest, darkest secrets in front of.
It is. Yes.
It really is. But to create this safe space where people feel seen, heard, appreciated, not judged, and for them to come out and say, wow, I can't believe that I shared that. Yes. It feels good to be able to create a space where somebody can share their journey with the world, because that is what is inspiring to the people who are watching. That is the thing. You know my background. I had a drinking problem, and I did a lot of things I'm not proud of in the past. Mm-hmm. And I don't like sharing about it because I'm not proud of it. Right. But I do from time to time, because I need for people to know that if they're in that dark space, they don't have to stay there forever. And it does not have to define them. So whenever anybody shares their version of what happened with me, then I always appreciate that because there's somebody out there watching saying, oh my gosh, you just changed my life. And if you can just change one person's life, just one, you've done your job.
Yes. Yes. I truly believe that we go through things and learn energetic tools, learn ways to get through it, not just for us to get through it. I truly, in my DNA, believe that sharing with others, and if, as you said, Julianne, if only one person listens in and gets it in that day, and it encourages them to try one more thing to unlock a door to be able to walk through, it has been completely worth the effort and the time. Because we're not here alone. We really are part of a community. We really are interconnected, and our stories, our challenges, opportunities, and victories, all of those things are part of what makes us who we are. And the mindset of this is not just for me is such a powerful and liberating, I think, believe, mindset as well.
You know, I want to share something because you just brought something up that I think is really important. And it's a really amazing tip for people who are going to be interviewing. Don't make it about you. When you get caught up in how you sound and how you look and how you're coming across, you lose the magic of the moment. If you can think bigger and realize this isn't about me, this is about the people who are watching or the person that I'm with and the conversation we're having, instead of being small, then it takes a lot of the pressure off, and it makes it so much easier to show up in a brighter, bigger way because you're not concentrating on how you appear. And the thing is nobody's looking for you to fail. Not a single person is looking to see you crash and burn. They're not there to watch with popcorn and, hopefully like see a car accident or something. Nobody's there for that. They don't notice anything that you notice. I mean, and if somebody is critiquing you like that, just remember, they're not in the arena with you. They can sit there up in the stands and, be a fan or and talk about you, but you're the one playing the game.
Yes.
So, that I think that stops a lot of people from putting themselves out there is this idea of everybody's watching, and they are, but not in the negative sort of way that you're thinking.
So powerful, so true. And I think also to address that if you happen to have something that's sitting on your shoulder that's negative, that there's a person's voice or something that has happened where you kind of go, ooh, that doesn't feel very good. You can actually choose to have a conversation with it rather than just letting it sit there and continue to talk into your next show or your next interview or your next conversation or your next book writing session, whatever it's going to be that you're working on next, which I think brings us around to mindset. Girlfriend, you have one of the best mindsets that I know. How do you do it? What are the steps that you do on days where it's super gray outside and things just haven't lined up the way that you wanted them to, even though you have given it your best? What are the things that you do in those spaces to be able to say, you know what, we're going to keep moving forward?
I love this question, and it can be different for everyone. But the number one thing that works for me, and I've noticed works for most people too, is to stop. Just stop whatever it is that you're doing. To stop. I mean, trying to power through with these negative thoughts, feelings, and emotions. You need to reset. And whatever resetting looks like for you, do it. For me, I might go walk my dog. I might go have like a little dance party. I might go out and I drive a scooter. I might take my scooter out for a spin. Just anything to stop that negative thinking momentum, because you cannot create something positive from a negative space. So if not everything's going to go according to plan ever, or something just isn't working out for whatever reason, literally stop. Do whatever it is to reset and change your mood, because that is going to color your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, and then, of course, your actions. If I am mad, I don't know the saying, don't make a decision when you're angry.
Right. Yes.
There's a reason for that.
There is. Yes.
Calm down. for me, meditation is something that comes up a lot, and I need to meditate, and it looks different for me depending on the day. Sometimes it's literally doing Zen meditation where I'm sitting there staring at a wall and breathing and counting to 10. And that works really well because it teaches me how to calm my nervous system, calm down with my eyes open.
Yes.
And that's really helpful for me. But, it just depends on the day, because something that worked last week might not work in the next week for me, because I just feel so negative for whatever reason. But the thing too that you mentioned before, acknowledge it.
Yes.
Don't wish it away. Don't push it down. Look at it. So if you can look at it and be with it, it disappears. Mm-hmm. So stopping and looking, those are the two main things that make a huge, huge difference in whether or not my day is going to be successful. Mm. And also, there's a couple other things that I have to remind myself of. Any little step forward is still forward. Even if I didn't get where I want to go, it's still forward. And showing myself grace for showing up, because sometimes I can't control, nobody can control the things that are going on around them.
Right.
And technically we can control what's going on inside of us. Sometimes that doesn't feel possible. I don't know about you, but sometimes it feels overwhelming, and I have to be with it for a minute. And to show myself grace in those moments and know that I'm not going to camp there forever.
Right.
Makes a huge difference, because I can not shame myself or make myself wrong for not being perfect. And the last thing too that I think is really important about changing your mindset is, and I'm going to use a saying from AA, progress, not perfection. Right. Perfection is your enemy. It will keep you from doing anything. And that judgment of every little thing that you do keeps you from moving forward. So embrace where you are in the process. Don't expect your painting to be finished after the first stroke.
That's really powerful, Julianne. And in the world of painting, if you don't like it, you can go back and, as many of the artists have, right, and just cover the canvas and start over again. What I think is so powerful is that you and other TV hosts, particularly on Achieve TV, your network, I have noticed, come in authentically who they are, and come in authentically in a place of saying, what I have to offer, I'm going to share with the entire world. I don't want to keep it a secret anymore, but I'm also here to grow and to learn in the process, which means I'm taking everything that I've had in my life that's come up to this point, and I'm going to figure out a way to use it for the betterment for myself and for everybody around me. That is such a powerful thing, to be in a community, Julianne, that is truly about dusting off, shaking off, allowing to rework. So not dusting and shaking off to say that never happened, but to shake it off so that it can be reworked in a way that can come forward and be helpful for yourself, and then also potentially for other people as well.
Community is really important, to find your people and to let them be who they are. You don't all have to be exactly the same. That's what I think is actually a disservice. And that's what I really love about the hosts at Achieve TV is everybody's different. Everybody has their unique perspective. Everybody has their way of doing things. And even some of the hosts that don't do as I've coached, I still love and appreciate them because they're staying true to who they are.
Right.
And they're putting their voice and their mark and their stamp on the world with their show. And I appreciate that.
Yes.
I think that everybody should. I'm going to teach you best practices. And if you choose to follow them or not, that's 100% up to you. But here's the thing. Best practices, especially in the media world, they change all the time.
All the time.
You really have to be up with up with the times. I mean, I just think about like the newest slang and all these words. I'm like, I sometimes feel so old. I'm like, what? It's the same idea. I'm like, wow, I never thought I'd say when I was a kid.
Right, right.
It's similar. I mean, it's much faster paced in the media world where you're saying, I remember when, and it was 2 weeks ago.
Exactly, exactly. And I think the other piece about it is the technology piece. I think that technology touches places quicker in some arenas than it does in others.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that for myself, I am not an early adopter of technology. I truly wait for other people to work with it and for them to feel comfortable. And somehow that gives me permission. I don't know why I'm this way. I'm aware that I'm this way. And so when somebody does a quick adoption of something, I find myself at times a little bit in the, do I go ahead and do a quick adoption as well? Or do I kind of follow my old pattern? So it gives lots of opportunities for growth, lots of opportunities to be able to be more comfortable in a world that is in some ways changing really rapidly. And the technology with AI and other pieces being so present at this particular moment. And so to make those decisions authentically, making the right, best next step, just one step. That's all it is, just one step for today. And then building on that.
You know, it's very true. What is the one next step? And I don't know if you know this, Sarah, but I don't think of myself as like into technology. I don't think of myself as really knowing what I'm doing. And it's funny because I always seem to know the answer or I can figure it out, like you said.
Always.
So,
always.
But it's funny.
Beautiful.
How we have this like idea about who we are and how things should look. And, you know, Drew, my husband, he's like, honey, I hate to break it to you, but this is what you do. And so I'm like you, though. I like, for example, AI. I didn't understand it. I didn't want to learn it. And then I found somebody that she just popped up into my life and was able to explain it in a way that it was not intimidating to me. And now I can use AI to help me make what I've created even better.
That's
And it
so
doesn't take
beautiful.
away the human voice,
Right.
but it might, I'm like, oh, that's a much better way to articulate what I was trying to say.
Yes. So here's the funny thing for me about AI. I was having a conversation with somebody about the possibility of them being on Simply Sarah. And we had done about 20 minutes of meet and greet on Zoom. And all of a sudden he said to me, have you tried AI yet? And I said, I really haven't. And he said, let me show you what it can do. And so he typed in, because the AI already knew what his websites are, he put in his website, it already knew that part. So he put in my website. So he said something along the lines, please, and I love that he uses such nice, polite manners when he's talking to AI. Please show me what it would look like to have a 20-minute program with at sarahstockham.com, and then typed in let it go, right? And it came back with what the commonalities were between what he does in the brain and what I do with not only the television show, but also with Reiki and energetic tools, right? It came back so quickly. And then he says, hold on, let me do one more thing just to show you what it can do. He typed a little bit more about what could that presentation look like. And it came back with, he would have 1 minute to say this, fill in the blank of who you are, tell a little bit about yourself. And then Sarah will tell a little bit about herself. And then each of us. So it wasn't telling us what we had to say, but it was just saying, these are points where I look at both of the websites and how you guys could choose to work together if you wanted to. And there were like 8 different ways that we could have worked together. I just chose one of them. Mm-hmm. That got me, just being able to see and have this conversation with this one person, got me to a place of, I know, I have already admitted this, I am not an early adopter, but it got me to a place of having a conversation with my web designer about a powerful CRM that I said yes to yesterday. And part of the saying yes to that is knowing I have some technology in front of me that I need to learn.
Mm-hmm.
But it feels like it's the right time, that we're in season 3, and this is the right time to be able to start using technology in a way that makes sense for me, for the show, for everybody's sanity, just easier. And so, yeah, there are differences between AI and CRM, but in some ways, CRM is just a step before the AI, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
just being able to use the information in a way that creates the flow charts and those kinds of things in an easier way for everybody. I think the idea is that we continue to be who we are with our voice, with our content, with our message, and yet find ways to make it be a little bit easier, a little bit like I don't have to be on a gravel road anymore. I could have the road paved, right? So
Mm-hmm.
some of those kinds of just, if I think about it from, take it out of the technology world and think about other ways that we are willing to make some changes in, I think that could be an absolutely beautiful thing.
No, I agree. And, the thing with AI, when somebody pointed this out to me, it made it not scary to me. It's the new Google.
Right.
It
Yes.
can go through all the articles that you would have to read to find the little bits and pieces that you want.
Right.
And I like this idea of just embracing it, as you feel comfortable with it.
Yes.
And that's the thing, like when you are being interviewed or you're interviewing somebody else, there's a couple things that, people always think, well, I have to have the absolute best microphone, the absolute best, what you fill in the blank, all that
Right.
technology piece.
Right.
It's not always the most expensive does not always equal the best. So to take
So
your
true.
time or your favorite, like
Yes.
for example, I'm a runner, and me having earbuds, which are what, like $250 to start, doesn't make sense. Those things are going to pop out of my ears as I am running. They will. They have. I've got the kind that go over my ear. Are they Apple? Are they $250? No, they're not. But you know what? They don't come off.
Right.
They work really well.
Yes.
So to just use those pieces of technology
Mhm.
when and where it makes sense for you, and stop making yourself wrong because you haven't picked it up yet.
Right.
It's okay.
Yes.
You know how long it took me to be able to use a QR code without feeling like it was going to put a virus on my phone?
Good point. Yeah.
Now I'm like, where's the QR code? Come on, people.
Right. Right. Because it is so easy, rather than having to type everything in, so easy just to hold up the phone and have the phone
Exactly.
take you to where the information is. Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah, I like that, you're embracing things as it comes when you're ready. You lived your whole life without AI. It's okay if it takes you even a year or two longer. It's
So
fine.
very true. And I think for me also in there is a fear that other people may have as well. If I choose this particular AI, so if I choose one that would look at the whole show and then pick out the top parts, however AI does that, to make them into shorts, and then find that there's one that's so much better, am I going to have that fear of missing out because I didn't get it right the first time, right? And again, that space of grace for ourselves, that as technology changes, there are technology things that I bought into years ago that are completely obsolete. And I
Hmm.
don't spend a minute thinking about it because that was a stepping stone for where I am and what the technology is that I use today, right? I mean, overhead projectors in the classroom were the thing.
Yeah, I know. Remember when you had to write on those little plastic things? Oh my goodness.
Yes, yes. And I don't miss it at all, right? And so, yeah, it's okay for
Yeah.
technology to keep moving forward. Do
Well,
you happen to use, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, our friend, and this is like, was a life-changing sentence, launch and adjust. And when he said
Yes.
that, launch and adjust, it made it okay to not be perfect at the very beginning.
Yes. So, so very true. And even if it's something that you have created, we still end up launching and adjusting. I remember a book that I wrote that I had to adjust afterwards, and it's okay. It was a surprise to me, but of course that's how it turned out. So coming back to the point of AI, I'm just curious, do you happen to use it to create questions or possible questions to be able to ask in the interview process? Do you find it helpful at all in that way?
I do. I find it extremely useful. For my TV show in particular, I don't tend to use it because I want it to be conversational in nature.
Right.
And I do think that it loses a little something and becomes more methodical if I use AI for that particular situation. However, I do have, for example, a TV special coming up. How many times can I ask the same question
Right.
to different people and elicit a different response without having the audience be bored? So
Right.
it has made a huge difference of basically asking people the same question, but from their point of view in a way. So it's definitely helped me. And also just to get the juices flowing,
Yes.
like when I'm writing a book, for example, or a chapter in a book, I will ask it for, like an outline so that it gives me ideas to start with. Most of the stuff I've already thought of anyway. So, but every once in a while, there's a little gem in there. And I think, oh, I could do this with it. It's always my voice. And I think a lot of people are afraid of using AI because they want it. They don't want a robot, they want it to be them. But
of course,
it's just another person to collaborate with, to bounce ideas off of. If you're going to, for example, going back to writing a book, if you're going to be writing 99.99999% of the time, you have to research. Why not cut down the research time?
Yes.
Because it will, in seconds, go through everything on the internet. I mean, it's not foolproof. That's the thing. It's not foolproof.
Right.
So
Right.
it's not, you can't substitute your own voice for AI. And for me, that was like a huge deal because I just thought I thought I was giving up a piece of me, and it's not. It's just adding value to what I'm already offering because it's still me, but it's like using a thesaurus, for example.
Right.
I might come up with a different word that I hadn't thought of off the top of my head that's perfect. And that's kind of how I use AI, especially in the interviewing realm, because, when I'm doing things with the LA Tribune, I interviewed, I think it was like 42 people for a summit, for the Think and Grow Rich Institute Summit. It's a book. I mean, how many times can you ask the same question?
Right.
To 42 people.
Yes.
So it does help. It definitely does.
So in that process, I'm so glad you brought this up, that you got to interview. You had done another one for them, the Legacy Leadership in 2023 as well, working with Mo Rock and the Los Angeles Tribune. When you go into these spaces of interviewing a number of people and you're on the clock, you're on the time, you have things lined up, what are ways that you organize things for yourself when you go into a space of doing a lot of interviews back to back?
You know what? It comes down to how are you taking care of yourself? Because even an hour, as you know, and even when it's fun, you're on. There's a huge energy difference. It really is. And to understand that and to be able to come back to yourself afterwards is really important. So for me, it's a matter of rest. It's a matter of eating well. It's a matter of watching my caffeine intake. And then also giving myself a chance to be quiet and still afterwards. I don't do anything after I have one of those marathon days because my brain feels like it's outside of my head. It's so big. But during the process, I will, it's not constant. You'll have like maybe 15-minute break here or an hour break here or something like that, depending on how long the day is. And you take that time, at least for me, I go outside, I reconnect with the earth, I reconnect within myself in order to push out that energy that I need to have for the interviews. So it's really a matter of taking care of yourself, which is number one, and also showing yourself grace. But then the important thing too is keeping people on task. How do you keep people on task? You have to listen to them to know how long their answers are going to be so that you don't ask them a long question right before break.